Welcome back, dear viewers. And in this segment of our program, we are going to have an interesting interview with Mr. Abdou Magdi. He is an executive business coach who will tell us more about the key questions that business owners should ask themselves as they enter 2020. Morning, Mr. Abdou.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Abdou. Always a pleasure to have you with us. To start with, what is the first question that a business owner should ask himself as he is assessing the year 2019 as it is wrapping up, and what should be his question for what he should be doing in 2020?
Yeah, I think that would be, are you playing to play or playing to win? Because in business, some businesses do exist for a while and have been around for a while, and they are not thinking about how they are approaching the problem, how they are approaching the products, how they are selling the products, how they are delivering the products, and accordingly they would have a lot of other opportunities that they are not looking at. So the big question by the end of the year, which actually comes naturally because that's the time of the year in which people are closing their accounting records and looking at the business performance. So it naturally comes in that there's a lot of questions and a lot of activities goes around assessing the previous year in terms of how well we performed and looking at what should we doing next year. From our perspective, what we think about once we really look at it from a strategic standpoint is you might actually be performing very well, but in a wrong market, or this product might be an old product. There are new products in the same industry, or you might actually be competing in a different industry. So these are all big questions that people need to start asking themselves. One of the big challenges is that owners usually do not have the time, and also sometimes not the setup and the intellectual capacity and the knowledge of pursuing such activities. So I think organizing events and activities for them in which they can get together and produce something in a short period of time, that's one of the most important things for them to do during times like these by the end of the year.
So, Mr. Abdou, what are the strategies that business owners need to change in the coming year?
Yeah, I think when it comes to strategy, because the strategy seems like a fancy word, and there's a lot of thinking, a lot of guessing that goes around it. A strategy is simply answering a number of questions. So if you define which industry and which products are you offering in the market to which customer, and how exactly are you offering it, what is your competitive advantage, what is your pricing, and how your organization is serving that, and how are you building sustainable, profitable advantage out of that. Probably if you build that, you arrived at what a strategy is.
Yes.
I think it comes into analyzing each of these questions and looking at how do I answer this as a business owner. So if I'm able to look at, let's get started with the industry and the products that we offer. If we look at, let's say that we're in the tourism industry. Yeah. So the tourism industry had been around for a very long time, it's Egypt, so it had been around but we can actually look as a tourism company where we're selling tourism products, expecting people to arrive at our gates in downtown Cairo. And that might be a very kind of old way of approaching direct traffic, but now we have the internet. So a lot of people actually come to Egypt and they have booked already everything. So they are not looking for anything to be booked while they are there. So does this mean that we need to have our offering and our marketing being done online? That's a very simple question and example for how changing the way that we work could actually lead to better outcomes.
Yes.
And that goes to every other aspect that we talked about.
Mr. Abdou, allow me to ask here as a business coach, what advice do you give here the business owner as how he should be reassessing what he is doing? He is having to reassess the product that he is producing at the time. He should be doing some renovation here to cope with the new developments, the new technologies. How here he should be handling the product that he is providing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is taking a step back, because during the year, and mostly owners, they are also owners who are operating the business. So once they are involved in the business, they are working in the business, so they are in touch with the operation and how different employees interact and how customers interact. So you need to take a step back to be able to look at the business from a distance, and that's something that's needed.
To have reassessment for the market.
Exactly, to do reassessment. So it's even one of the things that we do is we take them to out of the country, out of the whole city. Yeah. So sometimes we go to the countryside, we go to other retreats around coastal cities. So this is very necessary for them to disconnect with the business and to be in a new environment. So one of the biggest challenges is actually disconnecting. That's the first step, is that you have to disconnect with what's happening and look at it from an assessment standpoint with very simple points and ideas, other than going through a lot of materials to study. So having this time and space in order for you to afford to do that, that's one point, and also to be able to produce something out of it, that's quite challenging. So the first advice is to disconnect.
Indeed.
So, Mr. Abdo, how does the business operator know that he's targeting the right customers? And how can we define the segments and position the product and the business is in the market?
Yeah, I think like product, it starts with the industry, but if we like industry is going to be like too much for us to be able to analyze, to look at how the industry is performing, to look at like how the industry dynamics, who are the biggest winning companies within this industry, like to cluster that and understand the offering and the market share. And then we get into the products, because like understanding what kind of product, at what phase is the product that we're offering is very, very important. So we understand there as emerging products. Like if you look at all that, like for example, technology in Egypt, we can look this as like emerging offering, like people trying to get you to do everything through the internet. So you can say that there is a level of growth that goes into that, but it takes its time. Like it went well with transportation, so it's kind of emerging. So you see these emerging offering. And there are like growth phases. Like products in the growth phase, you can say that in transportation, for example, like technology is in a growth phase, so that offering is in a growth phase. So we look at the products not a lot of people are utilizing it, and then the product that there is a lot of people going to be utilizing that within the next months and years. And then there are other old products that have been around for a very long time. There is a high competition in these products, and accordingly there is a low profit margin. So you have to understand where your offering lie exactly in terms of like this circle. Is this something that's old and there is like low profit margin, but it's sustainable and you expect how much money you're going to make, or this is something at the growth phase? Like the best area to operate in is in the growth phase. If you understand that this is a product, there's a lot of growth going there, you need to be there, because that's where the money is and that's where the growth is. So if you're able to operate out of this growth phase, that's going to be vital. And the next question that you need to ask yourself is, how do I actually sell this product? Because you understand that there are different products that can sell for like £2 and other for £20. So is my product should sell for 2 or 20, and based on what? Because also that's a different messaging and different customer and different channels to decide. So understanding like how do I position my product in the market is also very vital, and also takes a lot of understanding and analysis to what's being offered and the competitiveness within a product. I might figure out that I actually would better go for a niche, like a differentiated, like a high-cost product, and accordingly I need to invest in the development accordingly. So there is some, and usually the work on a strategy, they say that there is part rigor, part is a lot of intellectual work and analysis, and part is about creativity. So it's about coming up with new ideas and innovations. So like balancing both of knowing the data and knowing what are the possibilities.
So Mr. Abdo, how do innovation and flexibility play a role in all of this? And is strategy something you can change in the future or event while executing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think it's actually a big question, like why we're looking at strategy by the end of the year, and why we could actually have been looking at a strategy along the way. But it's always about milestones. So if we say that we're going to be looking at our strategy at each quarter, that's going to be effective for us to judge that. I think some of the big stories is that there is a company that we're selling like an accounting software for individuals, and they were getting a lot of inquiries from their customers, which actually meant that they were not using this accounting software for individuals, but rather they are using it for companies. When they looked at it, they saw that majority of their users actually are small business owners. So they built another tool that's specifically made for small business owners, and it made 6 amounts the business they were making out of their tool. And that happened through their openness and flexibility to discover what the client wants, what the customers want, and being able to adjust the offering based on that. So there's like strategy is never guaranteed. So this is also, strategy is an experiment. So you come up with ideas and basically you experiment with that. You have a strong understanding that this is more likely to work. So it's always called the optimal strategy. It's like the strategy that's most likely to work. But you execute that and you learn from the response in the market and you adjust your strategy. So working on your strategy is something you have to be doing on an ongoing basis, and flexibility plays a major role in that.
Yes. To what extent innovation and flexibility is playing an important role in all of that, in choosing the right business and in continuing to do so and to develop and to have innovative ideas, not to die in the business, or not to have innovative ideas so you fade out?
Yeah, exactly. I think the first step, as we said, is it's about the process, because we're talking about someone who had been in the business for a long period of time. So when they think about their business, they're thinking about like getting like 7:30 a.m. in the morning and then just going to work and then like interacting in a very specific way. So for them to get out of that and to get into a creative process, or semi-creative process, is quite a challenge. So that's why, in order for them to be able to get this stage, you need to disconnect them by saying that we are going for a retreat. So we're getting out of town. So we're getting either to a countryside, we're getting to a coastal city. So for them, this trip actually has like a psychological effect in terms
brainstorming.
Of exactly. I'm gonna be away from my office, and then I'm gonna be like thinking of new ideas, and also having this as a guided session in terms of you have someone who really tell you, now we're gonna be doing that, and you need to think about that. So it's like evolving the in like a conversation, like, because usually when we talk about like a strategy initiative with consultants, they expect to produce like 30 pages documents that really saying different aspects, analyzing different aspects. But if you have a single piece of paper and then you're playing with variables and you're building different scenarios yourself and you're able to judge accordingly, that's that's an environment in which you can come up with a lot of innovative ideas, and you can have a lot of flexibilities in choosing with them. While we work with entrepreneurs, we usually advise them to produce 3 different scenarios. So you assess this year's strategy, and then you produce 3 different strategies, and then you choose. It's your job then to choose which strategy would you like to pursue.
Exactly.
So can you tell us a simple step-by-step formula our audience can go through to develop a possible strategy for their business?
Definitely, I think like there's a canvas that's already designed that actually should be used in designing these strategies. It's actually created by like two of the biggest names in a strategy, A.J. Lafley, who was like the CEO of P&G for 10 years and who transformed the company, and the dean of one of the business schools in Canada. So it's a very, very kind of known. I think you can find it on Google and work through it. It starts by defining what's our winning aspiration. How do we define that we have won? And also there's a lot of tricks that's there in terms of defining what is our winning aspiration. So one of the biggest pitfalls is that people say that I would like to double my sales next year. And he's saying like doubling our sales is going to be something like positive. And there is an element of looking at your goal based on the industry. So understanding that like if I'm selling like 6,000 units and the market worth is like 50,000, so by then, and I have 3 competitors, that means that I actually have 2% market share. So looking at your winning aspiration based on the total market share is very effective for us to make sure that we're actually making the best use of our assets and our time also while running the business. So what is our winning aspiration? Where do we play? So where exactly are going to be selling that? Where is the geography? Which kind of product categories? How do we win? What is our competitive advantage? Like how do we kind of offer the products? And then what are the internal capabilities that we have? So what kind of employees do we need to have? What kind of professionals do we have within the company? And then what are the management system? What are the system of reward and management that we need to put in place in order for us to be able to manage all this process? So it's just a single piece of paper. If you go through it, answer it, like while also understanding like the defining factors of each kind of question, but then you can actually communicate this strategy in 3 minutes. So it's always an effective approach for you to develop that, either as a business owner or someone who works very closely with the business owner who can actually have that and sit with the owner for 30 minutes and have a conversation about it.
So, sir, to what extent does the wellness of the business depend on its employees' experience within the company years in business?
Yeah, definitely. If we look at it from a strategic perspective, we'd say that if business is going through a lot of shifts and a lot of pivots and a lot of changes, that means that employees need to change and shift with what's happening with the business. And actually, not all employees do have the capabilities to shift and change. And also, there are a lot of like psychological aspects like positivity, positive attitude, etc., that plays a major role in doing all these kind of shifts and change management. So when we look at it in terms of defining the hard side in terms of the technical skills and also the personality, the personal skills of these employees is very, very vital for us to be able to kind of develop this strategy. Because if we take the owner away from the business and we work with them on developing a strategy and they go back to their employees, it's going to be impossible for them to operate that because like employees do have a different kind of mindset. So by then there is like the next step once you come up with a strategy, like a good approach is that you involve as many of your staff as possible for them to understand that's what we're going through. So engaging employees, whether at the first session or the second session in terms of for them to understand what's happening, that actually get them to be more supportive of the initiative because they understand what's going on. They are not threatened by the changes taking place, and also it becomes that if someone is not, it's not okay for them to be part of that change, but then it might be a good choice for both the owner and the employees to kind of to break that partnership.
So finally, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Abdou Magdi, Executive and Business Coach. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of Breakfast Show. I'm Shina Aider, and I was joined today by my colleague Mahisti Rabia. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mahisti.
Shireen. Always a pleasure.
And see you tomorrow with a new